You're preparing Christmas dinner, organizing presents, planning New Year's, and suddenly it arrives. It's not the happiness that should accompany these magical moments. It's a strange, heavy feeling that you can't quite name. It's as if, precisely when the whole world celebrates, when the streets fill with lights and smiles, when everyone seems radiant with joy, you feel more distant than ever, more alone than ever. And the most confusing thing is that this loneliness doesn't appear on ordinary days, in difficult moments where it would be understandable. It emerges exactly when it should be impossible to feel it. Albert Camus, the philosopher who dedicated his life to understanding the deepest contradictions of human experience, offers us a revolutionary perspective on this loneliness that only appears on happy dates, this sensation that makes us question our own capacity to be truly happy. Albert Camus knew that the human condition is marked by paradoxes that challenge our most basic understanding of what it means to exist. And perhaps no paradox is more bewildering than this one, feeling profoundly isolated precisely in moments when human connection should be most intense. When we observe year-end festivities, birthdays, family celebrations, we see people gathered together, warm embraces, genuine laughter. We see humanity in its most collective and welcoming expression. However, it's precisely in these instances that many of us experience a form of loneliness that can be more devastating than any physical isolation. Camus teaches us that this experience is not a personal defect, not a sign of ingratitude or emotional incapacity. It is, in fact, a profound manifestation of what he called the absurd, the confrontation between our desperate need for true connection and the reality that ultimately each consciousness remains irremediably unique, irreducible, solitary in its most intimate essence. When you're sitting at the Christmas table, surrounded by beloved family members, listening to familiar conversations, participating in the same old rituals, something extraordinary and disturbing can happen. Suddenly it's as if you were observing everything from outside, as if you were a spectator of your own life. The voices around you become distant, the laughter sounds empty, and you ask yourself, why can't I feel truly present here? Camus would identify this moment as an awakening to the absurd of existence. It's not that you don't love these people or don't value these moments. It's that you are, perhaps for the first time, confronting the reality that even the deepest bonds cannot eliminate the fundamental fact that each of us exists on an island of consciousness from which we can never truly escape. Collective happiness, however genuine it may be, cannot completely penetrate the ontological loneliness that defines our human condition, and this perception, far from being a flaw, is actually a sign of heightened sensitivity to the real complexity of existence. The loneliness that emerges on happy dates has a particular quality that distinguishes it from any other type of isolation. It doesn't arise from the absence of people, but from the presence of an acute awareness of our own irreducible singularity. It's as if, surrounded by all this celebration of shared life, we became hyper-conscious that our intimate experience, our deepest thoughts, our most secret fears and hopes remain fundamentally inaccessible to others, no matter how much we love them and no matter how much they love us. Camus taught us that this loneliness should not be fought with denial or with the desperate search for more intense superficial connections. It must be recognized, accepted, and even celebrated as an integral part of our humanity, because it's precisely this loneliness that makes us unique, that forces us to create our own meaning, that impels us to live with more intensity and authenticity. The person who has never experienced this loneliness amid collective happiness may have never truly confronted the depth of their own existence. Think about how many times you've asked yourself, why does everyone seem so happy and I feel so disconnected? Especially during year-end holidays, when social media fills with radiant photos, when Christmas songs play everywhere, when the whole world seems to be in tune with a joy you can't fully access. Camus would remind us that this question reveals an intuitive understanding of something very deep about the human condition. The happiness we see in others, however genuine it may be, is always mediated by our external perception. We never have direct access to another person's intimate experience. What we perceive as pure happiness may, in reality, coexist with the same doubts, the same questioning, the same fundamental loneliness we feel. The difference doesn't necessarily lie in the presence or absence of this loneliness, but in the way each person relates to it. Some people have learned to better mask this experience. Others never developed the sensitivity necessary to perceive it. And still others, like perhaps you, have developed a keen ability to perceive the most subtle nuances of human existence. Camus' philosophy offers us a liberating perspective on this apparently disturbing experience. He teaches us that loneliness amid celebration is not an obstacle to happiness, but can actually be a portal to a more authentic and profound way of experiencing life. When we recognize and accept our fundamental loneliness, we stop seeking in others a completeness they can never offer. We stop expecting special dates to automatically deliver us a happiness we can only build from our own relationship with existence. And paradoxically, it's this acceptance of our loneliness that allows us to connect with others in a more genuine and less dependent way. When we're no longer desperate to escape our solitary condition, we can meet others as journey companions, not as saviors or sources of validation. We can celebrate with them not because they fill our existential void, but because we recognize in them the same complex and paradoxical human condition we live. There's something profoundly human about feeling lonelier, exactly when you should feel most accompanied. It's as if our consciousness, confronted with all this demonstration of human connection, became hyper-conscious of its own irreducible and unique nature. It's as if, seeing all these rituals of union and celebration, our mind awakened to the fact that even in the middle of the most loving crowd, we are still fundamentally ourselves, with our private thoughts, our secret fears, our questions that no one else can answer for us. Camus saw this perception not as a tragedy, but as the beginning of true freedom, because it's only when we stop seeking in others, and in external circumstances, a happiness they cannot give us that we begin to discover our capacity to create meaning and joy from our own unique experience. Loneliness stops being a problem to be solved and becomes a condition to be inhabited with dignity and creativity. During preparations for a party, while everyone around us seems excited about the approaching celebration, we might find ourselves thinking, why can't I feel the same excitement? We might be setting the table, choosing music, preparing food, and yet a part of us remains distant, observing, questioning the real meaning of all this movement. Camus would help us understand that this detachment is not coldness or inability to rejoice. It is, in fact, the sign of a mind that refuses to accept superficial answers to profound questions. It's the manifestation of a consciousness that seeks authenticity in a world that often offers us only rituals empty of personal meaning. This person who feels displaced amid festivities might be precisely the one who has the courage to confront the most difficult questions. What are we really celebrating? Why are these dates important? What does it mean to be truly present with the people we love? And perhaps more importantly, how can I find genuine joy without depending exclusively on external circumstances? Camus' answer to these questions doesn't involve denying the importance of celebration moments or minimizing the value of human connections. On the contrary, he invites us to inhabit these moments with a fuller and less dependent consciousness. When we accept our fundamental loneliness as a natural part of the human condition, we can participate in festivities without the pressure that they need to complete us or save us from ourselves. We can be present with our loved ones, not because we expect them to fill our existential void, but because we consciously choose to share our unique experience with their unique experience. This is a very different form of connection, based not on desperate need, but on free choice and mutual solidarity in the face of existence's uncertainties. It's a connection that recognizes and respects each person's irreducible individuality, that doesn't try to dissolve differences into false unity, but finds beauty in the very diversity of human experiences. Perhaps you've already gone through those moments when, in the middle of a lively party, you suddenly realize you're smiling automatically, responding on autopilot, playing a role that doesn't feel truly yours. It's as if there were two people in you, one who participates in the celebration externally, and another who observes everything from an almost melancholic distance, questioning the authenticity of that moment. Camus would recognize in this experience not a pathology but an awakening. It's the moment when our consciousness refuses to be content with superficial participation and demands something deeper, truer. It's when our rebellious mind refuses to accept that happiness can simply be imported from outside, through conformity to social rituals. This interior rebellion, this refusal to be satisfied with ready-made answers, is what Camus called revolt. Not a violent or destructive revolt, but a creative revolt that impels us to seek more authentic ways of existing and relating to the world. The person who experiences this loneliness amid festivities is, in fact, on the threshold of an important discovery about themselves and about the nature of genuine happiness. The loneliness that appears on happy dates forces us to confront one of modernity's most persistent illusions, the idea that happiness is a state that can be definitively achieved through the right circumstances, the right people, the right moments. Camus teaches us that this search is doomed to failure, not because happiness is impossible, but because we're looking for it in the wrong place. We're expecting it to come from outside, to be delivered to us by others, by special dates, by celebration rituals. But genuine happiness, that which can coexist with our fundamental loneliness without trying to deny it, can only be built from our honest and courageous relationship with our own existence. It emerges when we stop fleeing from ourselves and begin to inhabit our life with total presence, accepting both its beauty and its strangeness, both its moments of connection and its moments of irremediable isolation. When we understand that our loneliness is not a defect to be corrected, but a fundamental characteristic of human consciousness, something profound transforms in our way of living. Happy dates no longer need to carry the impossible weight of making us completely happy. They can simply be what they are, opportunities to express love, gratitude, and presence without the expectation that they deliver us a plenitude that can only come from within. We can participate in celebrations with genuine joy, but a joy that includes and honors our complexity, that doesn't try to hide or resolve our basic existential condition. It's a more mature, more sustainable joy that doesn't depend on maintaining illusions about the nature of human life. It's the joy of someone who has learned to find beauty not only in moments of perfect connection, but also in the very imperfection and incompleteness that defines us as human beings. There's a fundamental difference between being alone and feeling alone, and Camus helps us understand this distinction profoundly. Being alone is an external circumstance that can be modified by the presence of other people. Feeling alone, especially amid the company of beloved people, is an existential experience that connects us with something much more fundamental about our condition. It's the recognition that, however deep our bonds with other human beings may be, each of us remains unique in our intimate experience, in our particular way of perceiving and interpreting the world. This existential loneliness is not a problem to be solved through more socialization or more group activities. It's a permanent dimension of human consciousness that, when accepted and integrated, can become a source of creativity, authenticity, and genuine compassion for others. Stop for a moment and think, when was the last time you felt this strange loneliness amid a moment that should have been pure joy? Maybe during a family birthday, or watching New Year's fireworks, or hearing everyone sing happy birthday and feeling like you were watching everything from outside. If you've been through this, I want you to know that you're not alone in this experience. Thousands of people feel exactly the same thing and often question whether there's something wrong with them for not being able to simply get in the mood. Leave a comment sharing, "I feel this too," if this experience resonates with you. Because when we share these apparently strange perceptions, we discover that they are, in fact, much more common than we imagined. And your honesty in sharing this can help other people feel less isolated in their own experiences of this paradoxical loneliness. Camus' philosophy offers us not only understanding, but also a path to transform this apparently problematic experience into something profoundly liberating. When we accept that our fundamental loneliness is not a personal defect, but a universal characteristic of human consciousness, we can stop spending energy trying to deny it or escape from it. We can instead learn to dance with it, to use it as a source of creativity and authenticity. The person who recognizes and accepts their existential loneliness often develops a unique capacity to be genuinely present with other people because they're no longer desperately trying to extract from them something they cannot give. They can offer company without dependence, love without possessiveness, presence without the need for total fusion. And paradoxically, This acceptance of the fundamental separation between human consciousnesses can lead to deeper and more satisfying connections than those based on the illusion that we can become completely one with another person. The loneliness that appears on happy dates also teaches us something important about the nature of time and human memory. Often, this sensation is accompanied by an acute awareness of time's passage, of ritual repetition, of the fragility of moments we try to make eternal through celebrations. It's as if, in the middle of the party, we suddenly realize that all of this is temporary, that the people around us age, that we ourselves are constantly changing, that nothing remains exactly the same from one celebration to another. This perception can be initially melancholic, but Camus would teach us to see it as an awakening to the real preciousness of the moments we have. When we accept transitoriness as a fundamental characteristic of existence, each present moment becomes more valuable, not because it will last forever, but exactly because it won't. Consciousness of finitude, far from destroying our capacity for joy, can actually intensify it, making it more precious and more conscious. The experience of feeling disconnected amid connection also reveals something profound about our relationship with social and cultural expectations. We live in a society that teaches us that certain dates should automatically bring us happiness, that there are ready-made formulas for well-being, that joy can be programmed and executed at appropriate moments. When our intimate experience doesn't correspond to these expectations, we can feel as if we're failing somehow, as if we don't know how to do happiness the right way. Camus would free us from this pressure, reminding us that our authentic experience always takes precedence over external expectations. The person who feels loneliness during festivities might be precisely the one who has the courage to remain faithful to their real experience, instead of forcing themselves to feel what they should feel. This fidelity to one's own experience, even when it doesn't correspond to social norms, is a form of integrity that Camus valued deeply. There's also a profoundly creative dimension to this loneliness that emerges in moments of collective celebration. It's as if our consciousness, confronted with established rituals of joy, awakened to the need to find its own authentic forms of expression and connection. The person who feels displaced during a traditional party might be precisely the one being called to create new forms of celebration, more aligned with their unique nature. They might be someone who needs to find more intimate and personal ways to express gratitude, love, and joy. Camus would encourage us to see this inadaptation to conventional formats not as a problem, but as an invitation to existential creativity. It's the opportunity to invent our own way of inhabiting important moments, to create personal rituals that honor both our need for connection and our fundamental loneliness. The loneliness on happy dates can also be seen as a sign of heightened sensitivity to the contradictions and complexities of human experience. While some people can surrender completely to the present moment without questioning or analyzing, others possess a more reflective consciousness that constantly observes, questions, and seeks deeper meanings. It's not that one type of person is better than the other, but simply that there are different ways of experiencing and processing reality. The person who feels this paradoxical loneliness might be someone with natural philosophical sensitivity, someone who cannot be satisfied with superficial answers or automated experiences. Camus would recognize in this sensitivity not a burden, but a gift, albeit sometimes uncomfortable. It's the gift of a consciousness that refuses to accept life without questioning, that always seeks a deeper and more authentic understanding of existence. When we manage to accept and integrate our fundamental loneliness, something beautiful happens in our way of participating in celebrations and special moments. We no longer need to pretend a joy we don't feel, nor force ourselves into experiences that don't resonate with us. We can be present in a more honest and paradoxically more connected way. We can offer our genuine presence instead of a performance of happiness. We can express love and gratitude in ways that honor both our uniqueness and our connection with others. And we discover that this more authentic form of participation often generates deeper and more satisfying connections than desperate efforts to fit into pre-established molds of how we should feel. If you've made it this far in this reflection, it's likely that these ideas have resonated somehow with your own experience. Maybe you're one of the people who feels this paradoxical loneliness, or maybe you know someone who goes through this. If this content brought some kind of understanding or relief to questions you've been carrying alone, consider subscribing to this channel. Here we regularly explore the deepest and most complex dimensions of human experience, always with the goal of bringing not ready-made answers, but tools for a richer and more compassionate understanding of ourselves. This is a space for people who are not content with superficial explanations, who seek a more authentic and conscious relationship with their own existence. Your presence here helps build a community of people who value depth and existential honesty. Albert Camus taught us that the human condition is marked by paradoxes that should not be resolved, but inhabited with dignity and creativity. The loneliness that appears on happy dates is one of these fundamental paradoxes. It reveals our unique and irreducible nature, the impossibility of complete fusion with other human beings, and at the same time, our profound need for connection and belonging. When we stop seeing this loneliness as a problem to be eliminated and begin to perceive it as a natural dimension of human consciousness, it can become a source of wisdom, creativity, and compassion. The person who learns to dance with their fundamental loneliness, instead of fighting against it, develops a unique capacity to be authentically present both with themselves and with others. They discover that true intimacy doesn't eliminate our basic existential separation, but honors it, creating space for both connection and the irreducible individuality of each consciousness. And perhaps, paradoxically, it's this acceptance of our loneliness that allows us to experience the most genuine and satisfying forms of joy and celebration, no longer dependent on denying our condition, but built from an honest and courageous relationship with all the complexity of being human. Loneliness stops being the opposite of happiness and reveals itself as one of its deepest and most authentic dimensions, a silent companion that constantly reminds us of the unique preciousness of our individual existence and the courage necessary to live fully within this condition that is simultaneously solitary and connected that defines our humanity.